The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen. Senator Cassidy disgraced himself in that situation and deserves everything he's getting politically right now. But Jen, we have breaking news that occurred during your hour. This is a stunning, stinging defeat for Donald Trump, another defeat for Donald Trump, and that his favorite fake U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, has been forced out of the Eastern District of Virginia by the judges who actually run that district from the bench. And it's a Trump judge. It's a judge named David Novak, who a Trump appointee. I'm reading from the New York Times reports of the breaking news, warned Ms. Halligan that continuing to file court papers in which she is listed as the U.S. attorney would be, quote, a false statement made in direct defiance of valid court orders, end quote. And that is a federal crime. So she had to have a federal judge tell her, you do this again, you are committing a federal crime. In fact, you've already committed a federal crime. They got her out of there tonight. And so Donald Trump's choice of a completely incompetent U.S. attorney to try to prosecute James Comey and Letitia James is now finally out of there. The judges are going to be choosing the U.S. attorney for that district.
Well, that's some good news. Who thought that an attorney with no prosecutorial experience who would do the bidding that no one else would do, who wasn't even political in the office, would do, wouldn't last that long? But big news to now. Look forward to watching you talk about it.
Yeah, total humiliation for Lindsay Halligan, total humiliation again for Donald Trump.
Yeah, there you go. On year one, anniversary.
Yeah. That's what it is. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. Well, exactly 1 year ago today, on the day he took the oath of office, an oath he doesn't understand, for the second time, Donald Trump pardoned every person who committed crimes for him in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, which led to Donald Trump's own indictment for conspiracy against the United States of America. 1,600 people who committed crimes for Donald Trump were pardoned by Donald Trump on his first day in office 1 year ago, including the people who beat policemen and tried to beat policemen to death and threatened to kill Mike Pence. Donald Trump pardoned them all. It was day one of the lawlessness of the Trump presidency. No one remembers the speech Donald Trump gave 1 year ago. No one walks around quoting lines from it or a single word from it, as people still do for John F. Kennedy's inauguration speech when Donald Trump was 14 years old. I'm sure even Donald Trump can remember that famous line, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, that JFK said when Donald Trump was 14 years old. No one remembers a word Donald Trump said a year ago, but people will forever remember that that was the day that the President of the United States, for the first time in history, pardoned people who committed crimes for him in an attempt to overthrow a presidential election. That will be what Donald Trump is remembered for. That's what he'll be remembered for doing exactly 1 year ago, that first day in his second time in the presidency. Today, Donald Trump stepped up to a microphone on that 1 year anniversary of his inauguration. His polling numbers have sunk over the last year. And he stood before White House reporters with a prop that he literally did not know how to handle and almost injured himself by touching a binder clip as if for the first time in his life. We saw what appeared to be an exhausted 79-year-old man struggling to pretend to be interested in what he was there to do.
Here's the book on accomplishments. And this is something, ooh, I'm glad my finger wasn't in that sucker. That could have done some damage, but you know what? I wouldn't have shown the pain. I would have gone back. What, did you hear that? That was nasty. But I would not have shown the pain. I would have acted like nothing happened as my finger fell off. That was a nasty, I think somebody did that. I think it was him. It was my man. How were you? You didn't do it. I know you did. I know you didn't. So, but here's the book. These are all things we have. I'm going to read a few of the samples, but look at this. These are all, each line is something that we did. Nobody did that before. And it's big stuff, too. Look, we have the hottest country in the world. So,
the man is not well. He holds up the book that represents all of the accomplishments as presented to him by his staff at the end of 1 full year of Trump governance. And he treats it like a pizza box he has just personally emptied and throws it on the floor. On the floor. Who does that? He's there to convince the press that this document that he was holding before he threw it away is a serious document. And what he's going to read to us from that document is important. That's what he's trying to convince us of. And he throws it on the floor, just throws it on the floor. Donald Trump has the weakest mind we've ever seen in the White House. He's the weakest person ever to live in the White House. He is the crybaby in chief. He is not just America's biggest crybaby. He is the world's biggest crybaby. When he's criticized by someone speaking on a television network, he says the entire network should be closed down. What kind of crybaby is that? The worst kind, the adult kind. When he doesn't get a Nobel Peace Prize, which he will never get and will never deserve, he insists that the recipient of the Peace Prize should give it to him. And pathetically, she does. And because he is the weakest, smallest human being we have ever seen in American politics, he stupidly smiles and accepts it as if it actually is his own, as if it's real. And that crybaby stood there today telling us that for the first time in his life, he would be stoic. He would be brave. He wouldn't flinch if that paper clamp had hurt his finger, one of those little fingers of his. That's when he would have shown us how brave he really is for the first time, I guess. I would not have shown the pain, he says. The crybaby says that, the crybaby who shows pain whenever he is criticized in any way, whenever he is disagreed with in any way. What followed at that microphone today was the kind of Trumpian display of ignorance and lying that we have become accustomed to. But now it's the 79-year-old version after a year in the White House, and he is tired. He is weary, and he mixes up words. He says Iceland when he means Greenland, which we've all done at some point, but that's the kind of thing for which Donald Trump and much of the Washington press corps would have attacked Joe Biden for days if he ever mixed up those words, getting a word wrong like that. Donald Trump spent an hour and 45 minutes at that microphone in the White House, and the word Epstein was never mentioned once in that room. But the word Greenland was, which is exactly the way Donald Trump wanted it to be today. Imagine if Joe Biden or Barack Obama were in the 31st consecutive day of breaking a law that was specifically written to force them to comply with that law. Imagine Joe Biden for 31 days violating a law passed by Congress requiring him to hand over documents. That's what Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump is 31 days into violating the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which requires him to turn over the Epstein files to Congress. And he didn't get a single question about that today because almost every question was about Greenland, exactly as planned by Donald Trump. By the time Donald Trump took questions from the White House reporters today, Donald Trump was exhausted. And his answers were shorter than usual. The questions were, as usual, bad. The questions illuminated nothing because, again, as usual, this was Donald Trump's favorite answer.
we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens, but we'll see what happens. We're just going to have to see what happens, but, we'll find out.
That's not a president. That's a guy in a guessing game who has no idea what he's doing and has no idea what's going to happen next. The White House press corps specializes in weak questions like, How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland? Why ask a question when you know there is no chance of getting an answer to that question or anything like an answer to that question from Donald Trump? So, of course, Donald Trump's wise guy answer was, you'll find out. And the White House press corps thinks they've got their headline, the "you'll find out" headline, like that means anything, like that matters. Donald Trump used Greenland like a shield today, an Epstein shield. And the White House press corps completely fell for it. The word Epstein was not mentioned once. Not a single question about Donald Trump's old friend, the sex trafficker and rapist Jeffrey Epstein. Not a single question about Donald Trump's old friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of sex trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein and then was moved to a much more comfortable facility from the prison she was in because she said nice things about Donald Trump. She said she never saw Donald Trump do anything that she thought was wrong. She is a convicted sex trafficker. She didn't see Donald Trump do anything she thought was wrong. That got her a prison switch. Not a single question about that today. Greenland is the diversion, and the press falls for it. Donald Trump is not going to buy Greenland. Donald Trump is not going to invade Greenland. Donald Trump is not going to do anything in Greenland that the United States is not already empowered to do. The United States of America already has an agreement with Greenland that allows them to build several military bases in Greenland, and the United States now has only one. We used to have many more, but we downsized our presence in Greenland over the decades since World War II, and now we just have one. There may come a day when Donald Trump announces a larger American military commitment to Greenland, but that will occur under an already existing agreement with Greenland that has been in place for decades. And Donald Trump will pretend that's an accomplishment of his, and the White House press corps will fall for it. As usual, not a single White House reporter indicated today the slightest understanding of what a tariff is or how it works. And so Donald Trump was allowed to tell his tariff lies uninterrupted by even a glimmer of reality. Donald Trump said, you know, we have, and by the way, no inflation. So everyone said, oh, tariffs will cause inflation. We have no inflation. We have very little inflation. Okay, there's a difference between no inflation and very little inflation. In fact, Donald Trump has more inflation a year after his inauguration than he did when he was inaugurated. And that inflation is because of Donald Trump's tariffs. Tariffs that have increased the price of coffee alone by 20%, along with groceries generally and every other kind of product we buy. At the possibility of the United States Supreme Court agreeing with the unanimous opinion of the expert judges on the Court of International Trade that the Trump tariffs are unconstitutional, Donald Trump said this.
If we lose that case, it's possible we're going to have to do the best we can in paying it back. I don't know how that's going to be done very easily without hurting a lot of people. But we're waiting for that case anxiously.
That's right. If you have illegally taken money from people, you have to pay it back. And Donald Trump's tariffs have illegally taken money from any American who has imported anything hit by the Trump tariff, which is virtually everything imported into this country now. Those tariffs are paid at the port of entry in this country by the company that is importing those goods. A representative for a store like, say, Best Buy is standing there at the dock or at the airport and pays the tariffs for all those TVs and washing machines and anything else that's coming into the country, rugs, whatever it is. And then the store bills that tariff into the price tag that you see in the store, the price tag you see online. And so the store is the technical, actual payer of the tariff into the United States Treasury, the American store. But you are the actual payer of that tariff because that tariff's going to show up inside your price tag. But the refund will not be to you. It will be to the store that paid that money into the United States Treasury. And so you're stuck with the higher prices that you've already paid all year because of the Trump tariffs. You'll never get that back. And there's not a single reporter in the White House who has shown any evidence of understanding any of that.
I hope the Supreme Court does the right thing for our country, because if they don't, it's such a problem. It's just so, it would be so sad. We're doing so well because of tariffs. And the people that are heading up the lawsuit, like there's a guy named Leonard Leo, who's bad guy, and people that are very China-oriented and foreign car-oriented and foreign business-oriented, but in particular China, they're suing to get rid of tariffs because they don't want tariffs.
That's right. Leonard Leo is now a bad guy. Faithful viewers of this program know, thanks to the illumination brought to the issue by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, that Leonard Leo is the guy who has been selecting Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices. It is Leonard Leo's list that Donald Trump chooses from when a Supreme Court seat opens up. But today, Leonard Leo is a bad guy. In the middle of Donald Trump's list of accomplishments, there was this.
Secured unprecedented settlements with Brown University, Columbia University, and many other colleges, including the University of Pennsylvania, where I went, the great old Wharton School of Finance. To restore fairness and merit, we're working with Harvard right now. They've been very anti-Semitic. Terrible what they've done. And we'll see what happens. I hear we have a deal, but who the hell knows with them? They have a lawyer that wants to show how hot he is.
Donald Trump does not have a deal with Harvard. Donald Trump has been lying about having a deal with Harvard all year. Harvard has refused to negotiate with Donald Trump and has successfully sued him in federal court. But Donald Trump has repeatedly tried to pretend that Harvard was somehow getting ready to bend to his will the way Columbia University did, disgracing itself as an institution. And Donald Trump says that Harvard is very anti-Semitic. Harvard University has had more Jewish presidents than the United States has. The United States has had 0 Jewish presidents, and most of the Harvard presidents of the 21st century have been Jewish. So, according to Trumpian logic, the United States of America really should be entering some sort of deal with Donald Trump to atone for its anti-Semitism. Donald Trump flunked basic governing intelligence tests in the press conference when a reporter asked the ridiculous question of whether Donald Trump could simply send $2,000 checks to Americans unilaterally without Congress passing a bill. The answer to that, as every high school student knows, is no. No White House reporter should ask a question that stupid. Why not load up your question with truth instead of asking a science fiction question that invites insanity? Do you think you can do that unilaterally? That was the question. To which Donald Trump, of course, said, I believe we can do that without Congress. No, it's absolutely impossible. Imagine if any other president stood up there and told a crazy, demented lie like that. Imagine what the White House press corps would do. Donald Trump is on his way to Davos tonight, where he will be, once again, the stupidest person to ever address the World Economic Forum there. California Governor Gavin Newsom got to Davos first.
Governor Newsom, do you have a message for Europeans who are concerned about the messages from the White House around Greenland this week?
Yeah, it's time to buck up. It's time to get serious and stop being complicit. This guy's playing folks for fools, and it's embarrassing.
Europeans think this is diplomacy, and this will ultimately
this is
work.
Diplomacy with Donald Trump? He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you. One or the other.
And
people need to stand, but no, the Europeans could be if they continue down this path and process. They need to stand tall, stand firm, stand united. Look, a year ago we should have been having this conversation, and they didn't. Okay, and now you're paying the price. Exactly what anyone objective observer would have anticipated we'd be where we are today.
And in the British House of Commons, Ed Davies said this.
Madam Deputy Speaker, President Trump is acting like an international gangster. Yeah. It is time for the government to change course. We have to finally be clear-eyed about the sort of man Trump is and treat him accordingly. He is a bully. He thinks he can grab whatever he wants using force if necessary. And he is corrupt. The most corrupt president the United States has ever seen. So there are only two ways of getting him to back down: bribing him with a new jet perhaps, or a few billion in his crypto account, or standing up to him like we would with any other bully, standing together with our European allies to make him back down. That's the choice. Which one, Foreign Secretary?
The overused, exaggerated term leader of the free world has never applied to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's governing affections have been showered more on dictators than on the leaders of democracies. The only love letters Donald Trump has exchanged in the White House are with one of the world's most murderous dictators, Kim Jong-un. The governments we think of as the major players in the free world are now all in a trade war with Donald Trump. And those countries today finally found their voice in a speaker not known for drama or exaggeration. Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Mark Carney addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos today and acknowledged humbly that Canada is not, in his view, one of the world's great powers. Canada is not as powerful as the United States or China. The Prime Minister began his speech in French and then switched to English to say, quote, "The power of the less powerful begins with honesty," end quote. And the honesty the Prime Minister brought to Davos today was to say the relationship with the United States no longer works.
This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat.
A rupture, not a transition. The United States' most important ally, most important trading partner, the United States' most reliable friend and neighbor, the most reliable friend and neighbor a country could have in this world, Canada, now finds itself not in a transition with the United States, but in a rupture.
On Arctic sovereignty, we stand firmly with Greenland and Denmark and fully support their unique right to determine Greenland's future.
Donald Trump's latest unconstitutional tariff insanity is to threaten to impose tariffs on Denmark and its European neighbors, including the United Kingdom, until and unless Donald Trump is allowed to buy Greenland. And Canada says no.
Canada has what the world wants. We are an energy superpower. We hold vast reserves of critical minerals. We have the most educated population in the world. Our pension funds are amongst the world's largest and most sophisticated investors. In other words, we have capital, talent. We also have a government with immense fiscal capacity to act decisively. And we have the values to which many others aspire. The powerful have their power. But we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us. Thank you very much.
Canada can be proud tonight. American presidents used to talk like that. In fact, every president since Franklin Roosevelt has at times sounded like that, or at least tried to sound like that. Clear, strong, determined, honest, and at the same time, humble. And now we have someone who publicly threatens Greenland just to hide from questions about his old friend, the sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, the man who said, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years." Jeffrey Epstein's closest friend for 10 years, once again, attacked Renee Good today, the woman who was shot and killed in Minneapolis by Donald Trump's ICE agent, who Donald Trump instantly absolved and praised. You'll hear what Donald Trump said today about that next, when Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar joins us after this break. Today, Donald Trump said that Americans just have to accept it when ICE agents make mistakes and kill them.
ICE is going to be too rough with somebody, or, they're dealing with rough people. They're going to make a mistake. Sometimes it can happen. We feel terribly. I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who was had the tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible thing. Everybody would say it. ICE would say the same thing. But when I learned her parents and her father in particular I hope he still is, but I don't know, was a tremendous Trump fan. He was all for Trump, loved Trump. And, it's terrible. I was told that by a lot of people. They said, "Oh, he loves you. He was I hope he still feels that way." I don't know. It's a hard situation. But her father was a tremendous, and parents were tremendous Trump fans. It's so sad. It just happens.
56% of Americans think that it was an inappropriate use of force when ICE killed Renee Good. And there is the most perverse mind in American political history deciding that the only thing worth knowing about Renee Good is that her father might have voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a walking open sore of narcissism. He always has been, and he's only getting much, much worse in old age. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She serves on the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Commerce Committee. Senator, what's it like for the people of Minnesota to hear Donald Trump today find the only thing worth talking about on Renee Good is did her father vote for Donald Trump?
I just thought it's only about him. That's all he thinks about when this young woman, a mom of 3 kids, a 6-year-old, is killed right in our community. Her last words, of course, I was listening as he said, they deal with rough people. Her last words were, "I'm not mad at you." That's what she said to him. So one of the things that's very concerning here, of course, is that we've now learned that the FBI had opened an investigation into this shooting, and then it was closed down. And they said they're not doing an investigation. That is just not what happens in these cases. So you have that going on. And then the other thing, of course, you have ongoing is that there are over 3,000 ICE agents, Lawrence, in our communities. That outnumbers the Minneapolis-St. Paul Police Department. There's only about 1,100 sworn officers there. It's more than the entire 10 metro area police departments that include Minneapolis and St. Paul. So you have legal citizens that are being arrested. You maybe heard about the Hmong man who, 57 years old, taken out in his underwear when it's 0 degrees outside with nothing but Crocs on his feet and dragged into this car, driven around for an hour. And then they somehow found out, again, a legal citizen, that they had the wrong address. And today I started my day with police chiefs from suburban areas. And I think it's important for people to know this Minneapolis-St. Paul police chief were there, but it also was suburban police chiefs who can't do their jobs because their officers are being called to these scenes where ICE is, or a car has been abandoned on the street by someone they've stopped, or a door has been beaten through, and they're just trying to do regular police jobs of solving burglaries and making sure that people are taken care of, or sex cases or drug cases, and they're not able to do that very important work. So what we're seeing here, and what I hear from so many police chiefs, is ICE is not making us more safe, they're making us less safe.
And we have reports now from the St. Paul police chief telling us that off-duty police officers in his department are being grabbed by ICE. These are citizens. These are police officers, but they're off-duty. They're in their plain clothes. They're going home maybe from work or to work. They're being grabbed by ICE.
Exactly. And I heard that same thing from another police chief. This is Somali police officers. These are people that just believe in our country, and they took an oath to put their own lives on the line for others. That's what police officers do, and they're clearly just being stopped. Of course, they're citizens. They're police officers, and they're being stopped because of how they look, because of what their background is. And those cases, if none of this, if you don't see these videos and you think, is this real? By the way, many of them are real. Those stories of the police officers are, of course, heartbreaking.
As we go forward, are the local police there coming up with any new strategies for dealing with this?
Well, their whole thing is to try to, their officers are getting exhausted, they're going through all their overtime, but they're still trying to do their jobs, and they're trying their best to tell the ICE agents or whoever's in charge in their area and try to talk to them about what's happening and who someone is, and trying to get some coordination. But you can't just have over 3,000 agents that aren't from your state descend on your state in the middle of winter and think they're going to be able to coordinate with them at all. So that's going on. And then at the same time, today we found out that our governor, our mayor, our attorney general, our county attorney received subpoenas. They're under investigation. So instead of investigating the Renee Good case, the federal government, the Donald Trump administration, has decided to investigate them. And I guess they're in good company right now with Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin and Jerome Powell and Letitia James. But that's what they've chosen to do, to send them subpoenas instead of to get to the bottom by looking at all the evidence and the videos and the witnesses of what happened in the shooting of Renee Good.
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight.
It's good to be on. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. Coming up, Donald Trump now says he loves the Venezuelan regime that is now in power, even though they were never elected, and they all supported Nicolas Maduro, who was seized by American forces when Donald Trump ordered an invasion of Venezuela. The same people in Venezuela are still in charge. That's next. Breaking news, the White House has announced that Air Force One has turned around from its flight path to Switzerland because of a minor electrical issue, they're calling it. The Air Force One is going to go back to Joint Base Andrews, land there. They will switch planes. There is an identical second version of Air Force One that is always ready to go in situations like this. They will reboard that plane. That plane will then take off later tonight. And so the Trump trip to Switzerland, to Davos, has been delayed because of that minor electrical issue that has forced Air Force One to turn around, head back to the airport. All indications are this is a routine adjustment that they're making because of this minor electrical issue at this point. Well, it sounds like Donald Trump is very happy with all of Nicolas Maduro's friends who remained in power in Venezuela, running the government there.
I'm loving Venezuela. They've been working with us so well. It's been so nice. And an unbelievably nice woman also did a very incredible thing, as you know, a few days ago. We're talking to her, and maybe we can get her involved in some way. I'd love to be able to do that. Maria, maybe we can do that. But we're dealing with the people and the president and all of the people in Venezuela, and we've been doing great. The oil companies are getting ready to make massive investments there. They have more oil than even Saudi Arabia.
Maria Machado, who gave Donald Trump her Nobel Peace Prize last Thursday, was on Capitol Hill today meeting with members of Congress, including members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Joining us now is Congressman Ami Bera, Democrat of California. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the House Intelligence Committee. He's just returned from a congressional trip to South America. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Does Maria Machado think she's ever getting that Nobel Peace Prize back?
You know, I understand why the people of Venezuela love her. I mean, she's someone with charisma, someone who is inspiring. You know, she charmed both Republican and Democratic members of Congress, said all the right things. I do think if there were an election again, you know, she would be a front runner. Now, that may be a year or 2 years off, but I think she should be a player in what comes next for Venezuela.
I know when on your South American trip, you couldn't go to Venezuela under the current security situation there. But what did you pick up on that trip about the situation now?
You know, what we found out is if you talk to the countries in the region, you were in Lima, Peru, met with their leadership, their foreign minister was very matter of fact that they're happy that Nicolas Maduro is out of power. He was someone who destabilized the region. There's 1.7 million Venezuelan refugees in Venezuela, in Peru, 2 million plus in Colombia. So they want to see this succeed. They'd also like to play a role. The problem is President Trump has not reached out. They're not coalescing around whether it's OES or the countries in the region to find out what next.
And there's absolutely no prospect of elections there. And with Donald Trump saying he loves Venezuela, he means he loves the current regime now.
You know, I think he loves that he gets his hands on their oil. That oil has to go back if it is sold. It's got to support the people of Venezuela. You know, they are in an economic free fall right now, and that's the biggest risk factor. We can't let Venezuela collapse. You know, it does sound like things on the ground are pretty horrific, food shortages, et cetera. If you are selling that oil, let's get that revenue, keep the country going, keep their economy going. You may, in the interim, have to work with the government that's in place. But long term, the goal should be allowing elections to take place and let the Venezuelan people choose their path forward.
What does Maria Machado say about how long this regime should be left in place?
I mean, Maria Machado did not put a time frame on that. What she did say, though, is, you know, I think she said all the right things in terms of her gratitude towards, you know, the removal of Maduro. But she was very matter of fact that the people of Venezuela, while thankful to President Trump, also are looking forward to that day where they can have their path forward. And, you know, that they are very fond of America and want to have a good relationship with the United States of America.
Congressman Ami Bera, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence. Be well.
Coming up, Donald Trump is not suffering the pain of Trump inflation, since according to the New York Times and Bloomberg, he has inflated his finances in the office of the presidency at a level seen only in the worst dictatorships in this world. That's next. On this one-year anniversary of the Trump inauguration, after Donald Trump added $2.25 trillion to the national debt, the New York Times lead editorial is titled, "How Trump Has Pocketed $1,408,500,000." The editorial says a review by the editorial board, relying on analyses from news organizations, shows that Mr. Trump has used the office of the presidency to make at least $1.4 billion. We know this number to be an underestimate because some of his profits remain hidden from public view and they continue to grow. Mr. Trump's hunger for wealth is brazen. Throughout the nation's history, presidents of both parties have taken care to avoid even the appearance of profiting from public service. This president gleefully squeezes American corporations, flaunts gifts from foreign governments and celebrates the rapid growth of his own fortune. It is impossible to know how often Mr. Trump makes official decisions in part or entirely because he wants to be richer. And that is precisely the problem. A culture of corruption is pernicious because it is not just a deviation from government in the public interest, it is also the destruction of the state's democratic legitimacy. Bloomberg News reported this about Donald Trump's finances today. As he returned to power on a frigid day in January 2025, Trump had a social media company, a crypto platform he'd co-founded, and even a new meme coin bearing his name, departures from the real estate projects and brand licensing deals that were long the main remit of the Trump organization. 1 year on, the universe of the Trump family's wealth has expanded even further, touching industries including firearms, rare earth magnets, artificial intelligence, and prediction markets. But the most notable change has been the growing concentration of the family's net worth in cryptocurrencies. The Trumps have generated about $1.4 billion from crypto projects that are new to his second term. A Bloomberg analysis shows these have gotten a boost from Trump's own policies as he has signed crypto legislation and appointed regulators who tossed out lawsuits against the industry. Joining us now is Tom Maloney of Bloomberg News. He's a co-author of that report on Donald Trump's finances. Tom, what did you find that surprised you?
I think the size of the crypto assets that you just mentioned, 1.4 billion. I mean, overall, his net worth hasn't changed all that much from a year ago, 6.8 billion, but the makeup of it has changed a lot. So we weren't even measuring his crypto assets a year ago, and suddenly, you know, almost out of thin air, these things are worth at least 1.4 billion, possibly a lot more in the long term.
And of all the things he's dealing with, it seems crypto is the one that's would be the hardest to see through, to see exactly what's happening, how that money's coming in.
That's right. I mean, by its very nature, it's meant to be, to a certain extent, anonymous. I mean, even out in the open, there've been issues with people like Justin Sun. An investigation into him was paused, and he's been a business partner for the Trumps in their crypto businesses. And Changpeng Zhao, the founder of Binance, Trump pardoned him. Zhao is somebody who has put money into Trump's crypto businesses. So these, you know, potential for conflicts of interest are definitely there. We don't really know a lot about what goes on behind the scenes in a lot of these businesses.
And this time they didn't even pretend that Donald Trump was going to remove himself from business interests while he was president.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, specifically when it comes to real estate, during his first term, they didn't pursue any new foreign business ventures. That's changed in the second term, and we've seen them launch, you know, a range of new ventures in places like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Vietnam, all places that are really, you know, geopolitically sensitive. And they've had no hesitation to sign deals that are potentially worth, you know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions to the Trump organization going forward.
Tom Maloney, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back. That is tonight's last word.